Welcome to Discover Barnstable, the official podcast of the Town of Barnstable, a podcast where you can meet the people who steward the programs and services that connect us to our quality of life here in the Town of Barnstable. We invite you to join the conversation as we navigate municipal government and our community pathways to help you discover Barnstable. On this episode of Discover Barnstable, we are joined by Hyannis Fire Chief Peter Burke. Chief Burke began his fire service career as a junior firefighter in his hometown of Swansea, Massachusetts. In 2012, Chief Burke accepted the position of Deputy Fire Chief in Barnstable Village. In 2017, he was appointed as the Fire Chief of the Hyannis Fire Department. And while in Hyannis, he has focused on team building and progression while improving technology, equipment, operations, staffing, and training. Chief Burke lives in Barnstable with his wife, Jessica, and their three children, Brendan, Grace, and Jack. Chief Burke, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Excited to have you here. I want to start with the history of the Hyannis Fire Department, because when you sent over the information for this podcast, I did not realize that the Hyannis Fire Department was started because of a fire at the State Normal School, which is basically where we are right now in Town Hall. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so January 24th, 1896, right where we're sitting, there was a really substantial fire that occurred in the newly built Normal School. It was only 15 days old. At that point, there was no fire protection in the town of Barnstable, so obviously the building was a total loss. And shortly after that, residents petitioned the then selectmen to form a fire department. That was declined, and I think it's important to remember the context of the time period, right? The town was really geographically dispersed. So a fire department in Hyannis would not likely have been effective for Barnstable Village or for Cotuit and so on and so forth. So the selectmen declined the law then and still allows for the formation of fire districts. So Hyannis residents got together and formed a fire district in May of that year, and shortly thereafter the Hyannis Fire Department was actually formed and operational. So the spring of 1896 was when we were up and running, and we've been running ever since.
That's absolutely amazing. I knew the building had burned, but I didn't know the connection between the two, that was the catalyst for creating a fire department here, which is so interesting. So the first station was built in 1925. And then the new station at the time in 1966, and then that station stood for quite a few years until, 2017, 2018?
That's correct.
Yeah, when the new station was built, and that was a huge accomplishment. It took some time to get that done, right?
It did, yeah. It was many years and a lot of good work by our citizens and firefighters to make that happen. And one of the challenges, of course, is we're a relatively small 9 square mile fire district. We're also very, very busy, so there's a fair amount of resources necessary to manage that much call volume. So to get a station that was appropriate took some time, but we're thankful to the taxpayers that made it happen, and we're internally grateful for the amount of effort and work that it took.
Yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful facility. You have a very large staff in the Hyannis Fire Department. So let's kind of talk about the structure of the Hyannis Fire Department and the staff. So you're the fire chief, and then do you have one deputy chief, or do you have a couple? How does that work?
Sure. So there's an assistant chief and a deputy chief, and
Okay.
they both have very kind of defined roles. So the deputy chief oversees operations, and those primarily consist of our 4 shifts. So there's obviously 24/7, 365-day-a-year coverage. That's performed by 4 shifts of 15 firefighters. So the deputy chief, oversees that and makes sure that they have all of the training, tools, equipment, and staffing necessary to serve the community. So last year we did 8,211 calls for service. That's a lot, particularly in 9 square miles. That averages out to roughly 25 a day, give or take. So that's what the deputy chief's role is. And then we have a number of people that support that operation. So there's a training captain and EMS captain that makes sure that those individual kind of aspects of the department have everything they need. We have a fire prevention division that does all of our inspections, our plan review, our community outreach, our public education. So, to support kind of a really dense village, which is what Hyannis is, it requires a fair amount of staff to do that. So, and we're always clear to say our staffing is predicated on the amount of calls for service that we have. So we don't have really extra staffing, so to speak. It's really predicated on how many calls come in. As recently as last night. We had all of our companies out on the road at about 11 o'clock last night, serving 3 different emergencies, and again this morning, back to back calls, 2 medical calls on a fire alarm on Main Street, and those just kind of go throughout the day. So, our staffing is really based on that type of call volume and the instances of those calls.
Wow, that's I knew it was a lot, but when you say over 8,000 in 1 year, there's only 365 days in a year, so that is astounding how many calls. And I work here at Town Hall, and I hear the ambulances and fire trucks going by all day long. So I completely, it's totally how busy you guys are. With the new facility, you're able to kind of, have that higher level of staffing. You've got plenty of space for everyone when they're in the building. Do you, if somebody wanted to come to check out the new station, do you provide that? If someone wanted to come and kind of see the bells and whistles that you guys have?
Absolutely. The station is always open to the public. We're always happy to have visitors come in and ask what we do and show them how we do it. And our firefighters do a great job at welcoming the public in. So everybody's welcome all the time.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about, we talked about the structure, but you've got a lot of specialty, I don't know if you call them services that you have. So you have, you have a dive team, you have a fireboat. Can you talk a little bit about those specifics?
Sure, absolutely. So, Hyannis is a really dynamic community. It's something we speak about all the time. So we have a working harbor, we have the hospital, of course. There's 9 schools within the district. So those all require some effort. So we do have a staff in the sense that we have 12 or so divers that are available for dive operations. So they're used if anybody's missing in the water. We do have 2 fireboats that are in the water, and we maintain those typically year-round, primarily from a marine firefighting standpoint, piers and vessels and things of that nature, but also to assist the Coast Guard with search and rescue. So we have a number of coxswains that can operate those boats. If you're in downtown during some of the events, you'll see our firefighters out on mountain bikes and the public outreach team. So, they really kind of serve 2 functions. One is to spread a fire prevention and fire safety message, but also to provide a detail service should an emergency occur while those events are happening. We have some internal groups that work on training our new firefighters as well, both like an instructor group and in a group that works on our operations to make sure we're as efficient, as effective as we can be. We've had great success with our firefighters who are really experts in their field at using their talents and their enthusiasm to doing the job and providing the service to the public. So we really try to leverage their expertise and their interest. So
right.
That's been really successful.
Yeah, I was going to mention the fire prevention and fire safety because the Hyannis Fire Department is at a lot of public events. You help sponsor and run the 55 plus community safety day, which happens at the Barnstable Adult Community Center. We've done it for 2 years in a row. Captain Webb has spearheaded that, and it's been an amazing event. And I feel like every time I see your staff at events, they're showcasing something new. They're kind of they have a stove that they bring out and kind of use as a display, and they have the fire extinguisher. I don't know what it's called.
The prop
where you can kind of learn how to use a fire extinguisher, and you have a screen that you can kind of put the fire out with, and that I think that's a big part of what you do. I know that you have a partnership with the Innovation School in Hyannis. I've seen, and you've gone out to other schools as well, Hyannis West, and things like that. So being out in the community, I think, is an important piece of what your staff does, correct?
Sure, it is. And so all the schools have liaison officer within the fire department. We actually kind of mimic a police program. So we make sure that there's a presence there, particularly during fire prevention week or during fire drills and things of that nature. So there's a level of comfort there. And I should mention too, I think, things that affect the community, like as an example, we have the CWMP happening, right? The town working on a sewer project. Obviously that involves some subsurface work, some trenching. So we have a tech rescue team that has training in trench rescue operations, and we've made sure we're working with other fire districts on doing kind of continual drills with DPW and others within the town. So that's a focus of ours, is, things that are happening in the community, we try to make sure we can support them well. Right,
and that's a great segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is the Hyannis Fire Department's partnership with the town, particularly through COVID-19. It was everyone went through it together, but Hyannis Fire, you guys really did a lot during that time. So can you talk a little bit about that partnership and what you did? Because I think it was amazing what you were able to do with your department through that pandemic.
Sure. So I think the town had an exceptionally effective response to COVID, doing a large part to the town management's approach to it, right? So we made sure we had at one point daily meetings, and they kind of went down to about twice a week meetings that as are still occurring. And we really focused on building a team that could respond to kind of the challenges of COVID. And if you recall, at the very beginning, every day there was new information, right, in terms of how COVID spread and how to best react to it and whether schools should be open or closed. And, obviously everyone remembers the pandemic shutdowns and the lead up into those. So Hyannis always worked close with the town on issues, relevant to the harbor or homelessness, or working with Cape Cod Hospital and Cape Cod Healthcare. So there's always been a tremendous amount of conversation. And as you mentioned, Hyannis is fortunate, based on our call volume, to have, staffing to kind of react to a number of different challenges. So we're able to help the town and others react to COVID-19. So at the very beginning, one of the initial functions was to try to test people. And, at one point, testing was really not available at all, and you had to meet criteria to get tested. And then as, testing became more available, we looked at different ways to do that. So, at one point, we were helping Cape Cod Healthcare in the town with testing essentially clinics, whether they would drive through at the college or at the hospital. And then we moved into even doing some homebound testing, where we were going into people's homes and testing them for COVID. And the idea behind that was to limit the spread to people who are particularly vulnerable. And then, fortunately, at some point, vaccinations became available in different treatment modalities. So, we flexed from testing into helping with vaccinations when they were appropriate. So, ran a number of clinics, even some in neighborhoods, right? So literally took a spare ambulance, some firefighters and some nurses from town health, and then went and did clinics like on street corners or at the adult community center. So, I think from any community standpoint, we really tried to do the best we could to serve our citizens during a really uncertain time. And we were just fortunate that we were able to use the town and other partners and other fire districts to help provide that service. And I think, ultimately it was successful, or at least as successful as it could have been.
Right. As far as the pandemic goes, it was a great opportunity for people to work together, learn from each other, we're all, everyone was saying, we're all in this together, but it's true. And we were able to, work with across all of these different channels to, kind of come out on the other side as best as we could. And as you said, there's some things that are still stuck around because of that came out of the pandemic, which I think is great. Like you said, we have, twice weekly meetings that go on to kind of keep people informed of what everybody's working on. So there are some positives that come out of that. And I think the partnership with the town and the Hyannis Fire Department just kind of strengthened because of that.
Sure. And I think when you kind of look at what's happening in Hyannis in terms of the zoning changes and building and the evolving nature of the district and downtown, there needs to be some communication there, right? So we know that there's a number of big projects facing Hyannis, and politics aside, if they get built, we need to have reaction to those. So that's an opportunity to make sure those relationships are really strong, so we can best serve the community as the community continues to evolve.
Great. Before we wrap things up, is there anything that you wanted to mention that I didn't ask you today?
I don't think so. I think, we're always very grateful for the community support. We have a group of, about 70 employees that come to work to serve the community the best they possibly can. They all have everybody's, best interest in mind, and we're grateful for the work that they do and equally grateful for the community support for them.
Wonderful. So I'm going to end with our bonus question. If it's going to look at the top of your music playlist, whether it's Spotify or Amazon or whatever you listen to, what would be at the top right now for you?
Yeah, so there's a local nonprofit on the Cape called Vinegrass that brings some local and really national musicians to Cape Cod on a fairly routine basis. They recently had their festival at the Churro Vineyards. So anything that Vinegrass brings is usually excellent. So the Wooks is one particular band, but there's a number of them. So I'd offer to people, check out Vinegrass and look what they have to offer for music.
Wonderful. I love that. I love this question because you get to kind of learn a little bit about people that you might not expect. Thank you so much, Chief Burke, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for spending time with us and listening to Discover Barnstable, the official podcast of the Town of Barnstable. We hope you found a new understanding of how your municipal government works for you and our community. Be sure to drop us a line at podcast@town.barnstable.ma.us and let us know what you would like to learn next. Until next time, go Discover Barnstable.